Hello, everyone. Welcome to Life Out Loud. I'm Junie Moon, your host, and I'm so excited for this day again to be here to share with you someone awesome. And we're going to have a great show. But before we dive in, for the new people, I want to just let you know a little bit about who I am, what I do, and why I created Life Out Loud. So I do transformational work with people. I am a certified shadow work facilitator, and I work with individuals and groups and workshops all around the country. And my passion is helping people step into their fullness, fully expressing who they're meant to be. And I do that by lowering the volume way, way down on their inner critic, all the voices in their head that keep them stuck or not able to stand fully in what it is they want for themselves. So if you're interested in finding out more about my work, you can go to innercritictamer, Tamer.com, because that's what I've been called, the Inner Critic Tamer. And you can find out more information there, as well as pick up my free ebook, How to Tame Your Inner Critic, which is a workbook, and it's really awesome. And because my passion, my deepest desire is to help people really feel alive and live strongly and boldly in their life, I thought, you know, I'm going to create a different type of vehicle to reach even more people. And I thought of Life Out Loud, which is my platform where I have this live show almost every week, and I bring on people that are really walking their talk, that are making a difference in people's lives. These are leaders of our time that they have a great message, and I think they're people that we all need to learn from, and I want to know and hobnob with and hang out with and learn more about what they're doing and to share them with you. So you will not be disappointed, like I always say, with today's guest, because I do pick and choose carefully and consciously. And today we have Karl Oakes. So I just want to pull up his bio and let you know a little bit about him. So today we're going to be talking about the way of the higher self. And Karl, he's worked his entire adult life to achieve personal integration and a genuine flow of benevolent consciousness. How about that, guys? That's something I think we all aspire to, right? And as he's said, unless it makes me an organically different person, even in my most stressed and uncomfortable moments, it doesn't really serve me. And he also says, I don't want to have to fake or force anything. I want to actually evolve. So Karl is a student of channeled spiritual teachings known as the Pathwork Lectures, and his other major influence has been the Mankind Project, which is an international men's organization that I actually know a lot about. It's awesome organization where there's it's supporting emotional maturity, accountability, and compassion in men. So we have Karl today. He's going to be talking about his program and pathwork and a million other things. So let me pull him up on the screen and let's see who we have today. Hello, Karl.
Hi, Junie.
You are now, you're on the screen.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really grateful. It's very nice of you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. So before we dive into, the work you're doing now, we always start with, who are you? Like, what's been your journey to this point? How were you led to the personal growth work that you've been doing through the years and has brought you to this place? So give us a little peek about who you are in your life.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the long story short would be that I was driven to therapy and to spiritual work basically by extreme unhappiness as a young man. I mean, it was just a kind of intolerable situation being me, it just really didn't feel good. So I did have some experiences with therapy, and then just I also had some kind of drug-induced experiences as a teenager that suggested to me that there might be this whole other kind of spiritual realm, that there might be something beyond the material universe. But I really had doubt about it. I wasn't really comfortable trusting that. I'm kind of a split between, on the one level, emotional, intuitive, and on another, very cerebral and rational. My parents kind of embodied that split. And so the rational part of me was really not letting me kind of have that in my life. And then when I was in my early 20s, I saw an ad for a shiatsu massage class in Manhattan. And I'm not really sure why, but I took the class, and the person who was teaching it was involved in the pathwork at the time. And she gave me a couple of lectures to read. And, and it's still emotional for me to talk about this moment, because I remember when I read the first page of the first lecture she gave me, and it was just like, I like, oh my God, it's true. You know, there was just
Wow.
this sense of it was as though it was something I had known for a billion years. There was this sense of ancient knowing and truth to it. And so at that point,
About how long ago was that you?
I was 25, I think, at the time, and I will say that at that point, or 24, whatever, 24. So at that point, what that did for me was kind of to stabilize me and support me and kind of encourage me to believe in that part of myself and so forth. But I really didn't take it to the level of becoming a serious student of the pathwork. It was more like kind of just this, like, oh, okay. And then I kind of left it there, and I got married, and I had kids, and I did that whole thing, and I write law books. I went into very cerebral pursuits and all of that. And then I found that the way I was showing up as a husband, but especially as a father, was just not acceptable to me. You know, that I didn't, I was being aggressive and harsh and acting out in ways that just really weren't appropriate. So I kind of got back into the spiritual search, and one thing led to another. And at one point, somebody gave me a book that had of the lectures, and it was just like, okay, now it's time to really go do them, you know, study them. And that was in 1999, and that was this huge turning point in my life. And I've been a serious student of the lectures since. And it was also after that I got involved with the Mankind Project, which is a lesser aspect of this way of the higher self, but it does deserve a mention because it has a contributory piece as well.
Wow,
So
great. Thank you.
that's me.
You know, it's funny that you're mentioning the, you know, being how you were showing up as a parent, you know, and as a partner. I hear that so often with the people I talk with and interview, that we, you know, we were unhappy, we had our challenges inside, but then how we were with our children or how we were in relationship, it got to a point where it's like, this isn't working. And then luckily we found some way. You know, for me, it was shadow work, and obviously, and which has a certain connection to Mankind Project too, and the Pathwork lectures, which I know nothing about. So what I would love to do, unless there's something else you want to add about your journey, I would love to dive into the fact that you have this program called The Way of the Higher Self, and it's based or connected to Pathwork lectures. Kind of help us understand what all that is, because I really do not know.
Okay, I'll give you just a quick headline first, and then I'll kind of develop it. The headline is that I after being involved with studying the lectures for a long time, felt it was important to really focus on the doing piece, on the practice piece. Pathwork is very, very highly theoretical in a good way. Not in an abstract, understandable way, but just there's a lot of information content to it. And the bits and pieces of how do you apply this are kind of scattered throughout, but they're not in the foreground. So that's what my program was really about, was to bring them to the foreground and then to try to simultaneously turn it into something that could be useful, not only if you were trying to practice pathwork, but also just kind of generically as, you know, a set of practices that even if you don't know anything about the pathwork, if they make intuitive sense to you, you could start doing them now. And, you know, then you could take your understanding of it as deep as you want to take it. But so I think I managed to do something sort of like that. I've had people who aren't pathwork conversant look at them and say, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. And that was one of my goals. But let me just back up and say a little bit about what the Pathwork lectures are.
Please.
Back in the 1950s, there was a woman by the name of Eva Paracas who did not self-identify as being a particularly spiritual person or anything like that. And she started having these experiences, starting with automatic writing, where she would just, start writing things that she was not willfully directing. And after that, evolving into going into trance and channeling this entity who identified itself as the guide. And the guide, over a period of 22 years, spoke through Eva in these occasional sessions where she would go into trance and talk for about 45 minutes. And then somebody would record that and transcribe it. And the transcriptions of those talks became known as the Pathwork Lectures. And there are 258 of them, and they're online at www.pathwork.org.
Really? So someone could just go right now and just go there and actually read the lectures?
Yeah, absolutely. Just go to the lectures tab and then go to the 1996 edition, and you'll see them all. And they have amazing titles, and they're about amazing things. I'll give you one as an example in a minute, but first, as an overview, what they do is they describe the nature of spiritual reality, and they also describe in amazing detail the whole kind of psychic inner landscape of human beings, the things that are pretty much universally true of all of us, even though it might look a little differently and express a little differently in you than it does in me. There are these kind of universal themes. So to give you an example, one that is very kind of popular is lecture 44, which is called Love, Eros, and Sex. And
can't imagine why that's a popular one.
Yeah, right. Well, so what are the forces of love, eros, and sex? And what that lecture does is to really separate out what are those three things. What is the essence of them? What is the difference between them, and how do they interplay with each other? And so, for instance, if you're someone, and many of us have been at some point in our lives, who gets into a relationship, and at first it's really exciting, and then 10 weeks into it, all of a sudden you're kind of looking at other people, and your interest starts to go off in that direction, and then maybe you act out on that, or maybe you suppress it. Either way, it's not healthy. This lecture would really help you unpack all of that, to help you get it straight. What are these different elements? Why is Eros fading right now? What do I need to do to make Eros come back alive within the relationship? And it gives you the kind of the framework so that you can understand what you're doing and what you could be doing that would be more constructive. And the lectures are just full of all these explanations of things that are just so amazingly sophisticated and so amazingly helpful in terms of kind of rewiring our behavior and our perspective, and creating much better life experience for ourselves.
Wow. So it sounds like material that gives guidelines to how to be a human being, and also the spiritual aspect, and kind of combining the two. Does it actually give like a to-do, or is it more of conceptual?
No, not so much. And I think that's a really important distinction. It is not about behave this way or behave that way. It's more about become conscious of how you behave, what's at work, and what the impact is. That's, so for instance, if you do things that are destructive, gamble, drink, whatever, in no way would this be saying to you, don't do that. The thing you should be doing is this, because that's a surface instruction, and it doesn't really change who we are. It just changes what we're trying to do on the outside. And generally speaking, those kinds of efforts are exhausting, and eventually they lead to failure. They're futile. So this is more about, one of the 7 practices is observe ourselves with maximum honesty and compassion. So it would be about really delving into what is the real internal story and maybe the vicious cycle of feelings and beliefs and all of that, which is driving this kind of behavior in me. And where is there maybe something about myself that I'm not willing to face, that I need to be honest with myself about? Where might there be pains, going to the first practice, which is feel all our feelings? Where might there be pains that I'm covering up and trying to avoid, and so forth? So in the process of really unpacking these behaviors, and shining light on them, we give them a chance to evolve. We give them the chance to integrate with the part of us that's more mature, that's more understanding of the realities of life, and we them to catch up with the rest of us, basically. So that's what it's about, and as opposed to a set of rules.
Wow. Sounds so interesting, and I'm actually really excited that it's accessible too. So now take me to the way of the higher self and what you're doing with the work that you just described.
Okay, so what I tried to do was to try to bring to the forefront, to just kind of pull forward what the action elements of this are, because I think one of the pitfalls of the pathwork is that there's so much fascinating material in it, and you can kind of get into it in the sense of just kind of drinking it in and thinking about it, and one of the most kind of nefarious tendencies, notice it in everybody else. Start to kind of say, oh boy, I can see that person doing XYZ. But if you do that, if one does that, one doesn't get the full benefit. The benefit really comes from applying it to the self, and the more you can kind of do that in a way that's regular and that has kind of a structured intentionality to it, and by that I don't mean kind of a forcing oneself to comply or anything like that, but just the more you can kind of really organize your doing of it in a pattern or a framework for yourself, the more you get out of it. So at first I just tried to discover what those things were, and then I tried, because I'm a legal author, one of the things that I do in my job is I take huge amounts of material and I try to give them some kind of hierarchy, so that at the top of the structure you're only looking at a few things, and then it kind of sifts out into greater and greater detail. So I tried to see if I could bring this up into just a small number of items, and so I ended up with 7, which is kind of a cosmic number sort of, but it does feel right. It does feel complete. And here's what they are. Number 1 is feel all of our feelings. Now, I'm sure as a shadow work facilitator, that there's so much more to that than what it sounds like. We might think we're feeling all of our feelings, but we might be covering. I might be going to anger, so I don't have to feel fear. I might be going
there's layers to each
right.
thing. So we might be feeling anger, and then there's the stories, and then there's the deeper layers to go to. But I hear you absolutely. So that's great.
Right.
So feel
that's
the feelings.
Number 1. Feel all the feelings, which opens us up to the flow of the life experience. Generally speaking, because when we're blocked here and blocked here, when we don't want to experience that, we don't want to experience that, it just creates a congestion in the whole energetic system. Number 2, we already talked about, observe ourselves with maximum honesty and compassion. And I really want to stress that there are 2 pieces. Honesty means, don't shy away. Like if I'm doing something which is selfish, or which lacks integrity, or which is lazy, self-destructive in the sense that I'm just kicking a problem down the road or whatever. I need to really be honest with myself about it. At the same time, I need to be compassionate, because if I'm harsh, then first of all, that's just wrong spiritually. It's not, punishment is not part of the spiritual growth process. And secondly, it's just going to discourage me from this kind of investigation, and it's going to stop me from being able to have that maturation process that I'm looking for. So then own our own judgments as reflections of ourselves. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Before you move on, no, it's okay. I just, there was so much you just shared that was really great about the honesty. And it even goes back to when you're looking at other people outside of yourself, to be able to take that back home. I mean, that's where the work is. It's easy to go, well, look at them and look at them. But to be able to come back and say, well, what is it about that behavior? What is it about, what's going on, with their personality that's triggering me? What in my life, or how am I wired similarly or not similarly?
Yeah.
And to really have an honest look at how we are.
Exactly.
And that to me is where the, big growth is. And then the other piece you said, which I really, really want to underline a lot, is that, that self-hatred, that self-beating ourselves up, or making it so painful that we wouldn't want to do this work, because this work is freeing. And so, to take the shame off of anything that we've done before, let's just do it differently. Let's have compassion for our journey and our choices, because we made those choices for some reason, and there were probably really good reasons. And so now it's like, okay, here we are now. Let's be gentle with ourselves as we grow, because we're being conscious. We're wanting a different life. We're wanting to show up in a better way. So let's do that in a beautiful way, so that we can continue to unfold. Because if it hurts, we're not going to do it. I mean, that's just, that's how we're wired, right?
Right. I agree 100%. 100%. Yeah. So the next one was going to be own our judgments as reflections of ourselves. And this is totally implicit in the lectures, and yet it's not stated very much. And so this is where I want to give the little nod to the Mankind Project, because in the Mankind Project, are you familiar with clearings? Has anybody ever talked to you about that? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we go through this kind of conflict resolution process where we are mindful of the fact that our interpretations and the stories that we tell about events that happen and about other people's behaviors and all of that are superimposed, that they come from us. If somebody doesn't say hello back to me when I say hello to them, and I go to, oh, they're being snooty and they're ignoring me, or, oh, they're mad at me, or whatever, none of that is necessarily true. And if I react to it, and things kind of spin off from there, it's helpful to come back and to unpack it. What actually happened? You didn't answer me. What was my judgment about it, or my assessment, or what story did I tell? You don't like me, or you're stuck up, or you're mean, or whatever. And then, the feeling, I feel angry, and is that the only feeling I'm feeling? Well, maybe underneath that I'm feeling hurt, and sadness. And then why is that happening? Well, my dad never paid attention to me, and then to bring in the other piece that you were talking about what is it when I look at somebody else that activates me, and how is there something like that in me? Maybe there's something about being snooty and aloof and all of that, which reminds me of some aspect of myself that I don't like. And the path work really does encourage that piece a lot. In other words, the path work is basically saying, the story that you are the way you are because somebody did this to you, or because somebody did that to you, that's not really a helpful story. There are other people who might have gone through the same experiences you went through and processed them differently. The fact that you came away with this, in some way, it's really about you, and you need to own that if you want. And I hate to use that word need. Let me reframe that. It will be helpful to you to own that if you really want to evolve past this aspect of yourself. So anyway, that's
That's great.
our own judgments as reflections
Yeah.
of ourselves.
Before you move on, because what you
Yeah.
just shared about clearing, and for those of you that don't know clearing models, of all the things I've learned so many different things, and certainly with the shadow work training, so many tools to help people shift, transform, own shadows, la la la. But the clearing model, to me, is life transforming, relationship building, and in shadow work, we call it clean talk. And for anyone that is watching, you can go to shadowwork.com and get the Clean Talk CD. To me, it brings people closer. It helps us own what's going on inside of us, that if we're triggered, well, what is that about? It helps us to really learn about, really how we're wired, and then being able to share it in a way that somebody can hear it and not get triggered by us saying, well, you did this to me, versus I'm experiencing this sadness right now because it's bringing me back to this time, and my judgment is, it's a skill. And this skill, among everything I've learned, I think is the most priceless skill. So just want to do a plug for shadowwork.com and Clean Talk for people that might want to learn that.
I agree 1,000%. I think if maybe a quarter of the people in the world knew how to clear, there'd be no wars. The world would be a completely different place. The energy of the world would be so different.
Yep.
If some of us knew how to take that clashing energy and ground it. And what you said about sharing, I just want to amplify on that piece just a little bit.
Excuse me.
There are models that it appears to me still have embedded in them. If I say to you, when you say that, I feel inadequate, that there's still this embedded little piece of, therefore you should sort of change a little bit. And this, I think, takes it a level further and takes it to, I am going to expose the entire truth of the experience I'm having with you right now, and not make you responsible for it, but rather I'm just going to share it with you to disclose myself to you. That if you really look at the word share there's so much, there's such a loving movement in being completely honest and putting out on the table everything that is going on in me without that piece of you have to change it.
Yeah, Carl, I want to interrupt you for a second, because suddenly on your end, there's this static and it's hard to hear you. It's strange. Maybe only when you talk, though, because it's not there now. Why don't you talk a little again? No, now I don't have sound at all with you. Lost you completely. Okay. Technical difficulties. Please stand by, guys. There's so much I want to. We have 15 more minutes, and there's so much more to go. But it's okay. While he's figuring that out, I'm just going to do a shout out. I can't hear you still. A shout out for his website, which is thewayofthehigherself.com. So you guys can check out his work and his programs there. Still can't hear you. You want to try again? Yep. No. Okay. I'm waiting. Now I can't hear you. If you're going to take that off, you probably should unplug it. Did you unplug it? Yeah, still can't hear you. That's weird. What happened? I hate when this happens. I'm trying to figure it out. Now I've muted you, and now I unmute you. Guys, I'm bumming. I can't hear you at all. I can't hear you. The sound is just gone now. No. So bring up your, I know, how face. Bring up your cursor to the top of the screen and see that little flower thing that says settings. Why don't you click that and maybe change the microphone to a different, maybe the computer microphone, and then unplug that again. I'm loving our time so much. No, I can't hear you. So you're unplugged right now? Ugh. So if you're just joining us, we're trying to figure this out. We've lost sound for Karl. So your headset's unplugged, and you went to the microphone. You know what I'm going to suggest, since you can't seem to figure this out, is to, since we talked about the clearing model, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to let people know more details. Junie, perhaps he logs off. Yeah, I was just going to, thanks, Sarah. So I'm going to talk about the clearing model. Why don't you log out and come back in? Let's see if we can get you in. Okay, so just go, click the red button, go out and come back in. Okay. So yeah, Sarah, I was right on it. Hi, Sarah. So, so we were talking about the clearing model. So basically, any time that there is something that gets triggered inside of you, something where you're charged, or, there's, as my ex-husband would say, something's renting space in your head. Like you just keep revisiting it and you keep thinking about things and it's bothering you. Oh gosh. I have sound on Karl, so I'm going to stop talking. So great. Well, we're back. Yes, I can hear you. So
wonderful.
So take it away.
Okay, I'll just try to cruise a little quickly because we lost a little time there. So the other 4 steps are understand our life circumstances as spiritual effects. Basically, this is a reference to karma, okay? And it's karma understood in a little bit more complicated or subtle way than we usually do. The simple understanding of karma, popular understanding is if I do something bad, bad things will come to me. If I do something good, good things will come to me. This kind of says if I am holding and emanating, even if it's unconscious, negative energy out into the universe, then the universe is going to bring me back experiences that correspond to that. And there are going to be opportunities in that for me to understand what's really going on for me unconsciously. So this is challenging because a lot of times when bad things happen to us, people treat us badly, etc., it's really easy to get kind of fixated on how, they're wrong and they did this thing badly and all that kind of stuff. And all of that might be completely true. And there might be real pain that has to be gone through about it. But there's also a piece of what's in this for me. How in some way does this teach me something about myself? Okay, I'll just leave it there for that. Develop a positive intention to give our best to life. Most of us, I'll certainly say myself, have ways in which we hold back, ways in which we don't give ourselves to life fully, give ourselves to relationships fully, to taking care of ourselves fully, to whatever it might be. Often there's some kind of story underneath that, there's some kind of belief system underneath that, or strategy underneath that, or whatever. If we can unpack that, we can give more to life, and the more we give to life, the more we get back. Visualize the self we are evolving towards. Means just kind of looking at where we are, looking at what our evolutionary kind of track is, what we're working on, what's getting better, where are we stuck, kind of projecting forward, where would I be if I kept going with the things that I'm moving on and I got unstuck on some of these other things, imagining that person and kind of creating a vision of that person and just touching base with that on a regular basis. It's not magic. It doesn't avoid any of the other work. It just supports the other work and helps to make that growth happen. And then finally connect with the higher power or the divine or whatever word you're comfortable with there. It's a combination of kind of prayer, like request for the strength and the focus and the persistence to do this work, and also a more receptive kind of quiet stance of just receiving energetic support and inspiration and all of that. And those are the 7 steps.
Awesome. So with all of that, and this is another personal growth type of work, how might you say, is it different than other personal growth work, and how has it changed, shaped, enhanced your life?
Okay, the difference, it really depends on what you're comparing it to. But I think probably the thing that stands out the most about it is that there is, if you're really practicing it sincerely, there's no opportunity for bypass in it. You can't get away from your pain. You can't get away from your immaturity, from your kind of more negative intentions and all of that, and be honestly doing this work. And that's a blessing, because every time we avoid that stuff, we are holding ourselves back.
I see that's a pitfall with a lot of the spiritual paths that, I've come across, where people can be up here in, the divine spiritual realms and are on some level wanting that spiritual bypass. And for me, what I tell people is I think people are putting their humanity in shadow. They're not actually being with what is here and really doing the deeper healing, which of course, what I see is when you do the deeper emotional healing, allows you to rise up way more into the spiritual realms. So I love that there's kind of like a fail safe? What's that word that's like kind of built into this, where you can't have the bypass. You got to go in and you got to do the work.
Yeah. If you're doing it sincerely, and it's like anything else. You can pretend to yourself that you're doing more than you are, and gosh, I have done that. I do it all the time, but I try to catch myself and try to be honest with myself. But yeah, totally agree again with what you said. I mean, I think our perspectives are really, I think there's a lot of languaging difference that we would find if we really delved deeply. But I think in terms of fundamental philosophy, what you're saying, what I'm saying is really exactly, totally consistent. And then the other part of your question was, how has it changed me? And as I described to you, I got into this seriously because I was very irritable. I very close to a lot of anger. There was a lot of inner just tension, like tectonic plates, just rubbing up against each other, as well as depression and some obsessive compulsive behavior and stuff. I was just like it was so hard to just there was no peace, And I've been doing this work for a long time now. It's been 17 years, so it wasn't like a switch flipped or anything like that. But I discovered a very crucial repressed memory from childhood, which suddenly kind of explained everything to me. That happened in the early stages of doing the work. I have very extensive memories of childhood. It never occurred to me that there might be something I didn't know, because I knew all this stuff, including these really like traumatic things and stuff. So I was lulled into a false sense of security about that. I uncovered the missing link, the thing that made it all made sense. And then, I think I've gone from being a lot of my compensatory behaviors for how bad I felt were, arrogant, intolerant, cynical, not listening to other people, not being really interested, self-centered, all that kind of stuff. I think I'm much more, I'm calmer, I'm nicer, I'm more actually connected to other human beings. I'm more like, and the whole kind of ego trip stuff that used to be so seductive to me just doesn't have a pull on me now. It's like I get that there's nothing in that, and that I don't need it, and that I can kind of celebrate the aspects of myself that are my strengths without going off into that kind of competitive and, I'm better and, you're not important and all the kind of stuff that I used to live in that brought me a lot of negativity. So off the top of my head, that's how I'm different. If you ask me tomorrow, I might say something a little different. But
well, you talk about being honest and looking at yourself. I mean, just what you just shared. Talk about honesty. Talk about really self-reflection and going, okay, this is how I was. This is how I perceive myself. This is how I'm feeling now and how I think I am. That's the work. It's beautiful. So we have 5 more minutes before we're supposedly done, and I know we lose some time. Can you give us a sense of the practices? And if we go over a little bit, if you want to go over a little bit, I'm fine with a few extra minutes. But we did say we were going to talk about the practices. What are the practices? And maybe tell us a little bit about the way of the higher self.
Well, I gave you the 7. Gave you a little kind of highlights, and then we kind of went deeper into the one about the owning judgments. So I feel a certain sense of completion about that piece. Although if anybody out there, has questions or wants me to kind of elaborate on anything, I'd be happy to do that. I do want to. Let me just get in a piece that I wanted to make sure I got in, and then we can kind of see where that leaves us.
Great.
Okay, I want to talk about kind of where I am with this project, and so partly just sharing my own experience, but also
I was just going to go there, so that's perfect.
Okay, yeah. Right now, the written material on the website's well developed, and probably not going to change a whole lot as it is, but it's just the skeleton. It's just the kind of outline of everything that there is. And so what the website's kind of ready to receive at this point is elaboration, is stuff like what we're talking about now, going into depth about what does owning judgments mean and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to supply that as video material, and I'm probably as some kind of blog material as well, although I'm a little less clear on what that's going to look like. I was going to, so if people are interested in knowing more about this, it would be helpful if they emailed me on the contact page of the site, so that as that new material starts to come in, I can let them know, this is happening, it's starting to move on this front and that front, because right now there's a limit to what is there. And I would also encourage people to go take a look at the lectures on pathwork.org and at the lecture tab and the 96 editions under there, and just look at the titles. And if you're moved to read something, there's probably something in that for you. So I wanted to make sure people understood that it's a kind of a work in progress. And then I'll tell you a little story about that, because you talk about the inner critic. I just want to say that it has taken me a long time to get to this, because I kind of have these 2 critics, one on each shoulder. One's this super demanding and kind of unreasonable critic who says, everything I do is stupid and bad and inadequate and going to get me nothing but humiliation. It's really there to guard me, I think, from humiliation.
Right.
So don't do anything, and then nobody can laugh at it.
Right.
And then I have this other critic that I think is more sane and truthful and responsible, that says, make sure before you go out into the world with something that you consider sacred, that you have, your ducks in a row in terms of being able to present this in a way that's appropriate, that's appropriately truthful, respectful, and all of that. And it took me a while before both of those guys would kind of leave me alone. That both the unreasonable and reasonable critics were objecting, but eventually I feel now like where that all kind of resolved was in my being able to say, and I want to say this, that these 7 practices There's a couple of them that I'm very good at and I do a lot. There's a couple that I'm so-so at and I do less. And there's a couple that I'm really not very good at and don't do very much. Mm-hmm. And I will benefit from doing this whole thing because it will help me to kind of step up my game in the areas where I have, where I need to grow into these practices. And it wasn't until I could kind of say that without shame and just kind of put that out, kind of matter-of-factly, that I felt that I could really go forward with the project. So.
Wow. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you. So your website is thewayofthehigherself.com. I just want to make sure I got that right. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay, so thewayofthehigherself.com. And as you hear, he's got the 7 practices, and it's, kind of still in the shaping and videos and blogs and all the different things that are on your website that are coming and are there. So definitely check out his website. Yeah, I mean, the practices sound amazing, and diving deep into them and finding the tools inside of them, that's very exciting to me. So I look forward to hearing more about it and the evolution of it, and what it's done for you, and I'm sure will do for many, many people. So I can't believe we are out of time. It just happened so fast. So Karl, I just want to thank you again for being here and sharing your wisdom with us and all that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. It's really a pleasure and a privilege.
Oh, thank you so much. So guys, that's it for today. Go to thewayofthehigherself.com, and if you want to know more about my work, you can go to innercritictamer.com. The clean talk I put in the chat room for shadowwork.com. So much out there. Go find what you want, what you need, what your heart desires, and live a beautiful life, guys. Blessings to you all, and have a great, great day. Bye.